So let's talk about the big stuff. Climate change, the mental health crisis, all these massive problems we're facing. We tend to think we know where they came from. But what if we've got it all wrong? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating idea from John Cantillo, who argues that the roots of our modern crises go way, way back to a single ancient change. It's easy to point the finger at the Industrial Revolution, right? The factories, the smokestacks, we blame them for everything that's wrong with our planet. But what if that's not the cause? What if it's just a symptom of something much, much older? What if the real pivot point, the moment everything changed for humanity, happened a full 12,000 years ago? All right, so let's get into it. To really find the culprit here, we've got to go back in time. And I mean way back, long before the steam engine was even a thought, to a critical turning point in our history. Okay, just take a look at this timeline for a second. It really puts things in perspective. Modern humans, we've been on this planet for about 300,000 years. And for almost all of that time, we're talking like 96% of our entire history, we were hunter-gatherers. See that little slice at the end? That's the Industrial Revolution. It's barely a blip. The argument here is that the real game changer wasn't 250 years ago. It was 12,000 years ago when we made what this source calls the change, the moment we stopped roaming and started settling down. And this one single change, moving into settled communities, well, it wasn't just about having a permanent address. It was like tipping over the first domino in a huge, long line. It set off a massive chain reaction, completely changing the fundamentals of how we live, how we think, and even how we relate to each other. So the very first domino to fall, the whole idea of ownership. See, in a hunter-gatherer world, nobody owned the land. It was a shared resource, a commons that everyone depended on for survival. But the second we settled down, that all changed. Land became property, something you could own, put a fence around, and, well, exploit for your own personal gain. And that leads right into the next huge shift. The entire hunter-gatherer way of life was built on collaboration. You had to work with everyone else because the survival of the whole group depended on it. But this new, settled world, founded on private property, it flipped the script. It introduced a brand new default mode for humanity: competition. Suddenly, it was about working against others to get ahead. This also completely rewired what drives us. Think about it. Life went from being needs-driven, focused on the basics like food, water, shelter, to being wants-driven. A hunter-gatherer's life was about securing what was essential. Our world, it's all about this endless, complex chase to acquire things we don't actually need. And just how powerful is this wants-driven engine? Get a load of this number: $1 trillion. That's what we're expected to spend on advertising, globally, this year alone. We've built an entire trillion-dollar industry with one job: to make you feel dissatisfied with what you have so you'll buy more. So the bottom line is this change totally upended our economic model. We went from what some anthropologists call a gift economy, which is all about giving, sharing, and supporting each other, to what you could call a get economy, a system where the main goal is to acquire, to get more for yourself, often at the expense of others. And this didn't just change our economy, it actually rewired our brains. In those old hunter-gatherer societies, where did you find comfort and security? In other people, in your community. But now, as this quote points out, we're looking for that same feeling of safety and comfort in stuff, in our material possessions. We're literally trying to buy the security our ancestors found in each other. Okay, so I know what you might be thinking. Hold on, what about technology? Isn't that the real issue? Well, according to this argument, technology isn't the root cause. Instead, think of it as the ultimate accelerant. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire that had already been smoldering for thousands and thousands of years. Basically, technology let us blow past all our natural biological limits. Our circadian rhythms replaced by atomic clocks that let us work 24/7. Our own muscle power, nothing compared to robots and jet engines. Our brains, now competing with AI. Technology didn't invent the gig economy, but it sure did give it superpowers. It supercharged every single one of these trends that started all those millennia ago. So you take these fundamental shifts from 12,000 years ago, you pour the rocket fuel of technology on top. And where does that leave us? What's the final bill? Let's take a hard look at the actual cost to our planet. A really good way to measure this impact is something called the ecological footprint. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It's basically the amount of land and sea area the planet needs to produce everything we consume and to absorb all the waste we create. All right, check out this chart. It lays it all out. Over on the left, you've got a country like Eritrea with one of the lowest footprints on Earth. That middle bar? That's what's called global biocapacity. That's the limit. It's what the Earth can actually sustain for every single person, about 1.5 global hectares. And then look all the way over on the right. That's Qatar, with one of the highest footprints, coming in at almost 15. So what does that huge gap really mean in practice? Well, it means this. If everyone on Earth lived the way the average person in Qatar does, we would need 9.7 planets to support us. 9.7. The problem is, we've only got one. So when you look at this whole story, this 12,000-year journey from then to now, it all boils down to one single massive trade-off, a choice that our species made a long, long time ago.
Think about it. We traded fellowship for possessions. We swapped the deep bonds of community for the fleeting buzz of consumption. And so, looking at where we are now, the state of our planet, the state of our own well-being, you have to ask the question, the one this whole story leads to, was it a good trade? Was it worth it?